Okay, so let's talk about one of the biggest things on every educator's mind right now: artificial intelligence. We're going to walk through a really practical guide based on some fantastic suggestions from the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning to help you shift your whole mindset, moving away from just policing AI and towards a smarter way of teaching with it. Does this feel familiar? You're spending way more time trying to figure out if a student used AI than actually, teaching. Trust me, you are not alone. It's frustrating, but it really doesn't have to be that way. We're about to change that whole dynamic. So here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into why students are even using AI. Then, we'll look at the different ways they use it, because it's not all the same. After that, we'll get into a proactive toolkit you can use. We'll touch on AI detectors, and finally, we'll tie it all together with that big shift from policing to pedagogy. All right, first things first. If we want to come up with a strategy that actually works, we have to get to the root of it all. Why are students turning to these tools? And believe me, it is so much more complicated than them just trying to take a shortcut. Just look at this list. It's a lot. We're talking about students who are totally swamped, juggling jobs, family, you name it. Maybe they're struggling with a very specific style of academic writing, or they're wrestling with imposter syndrome, feeling like they don't belong. Sometimes it's a lack of foundational skills or really unclear instructions on an assignment. Throw in mental health struggles, the social pressure of, well, everyone else is doing it, and a feeling that no one's really checking. And yeah, you've got the perfect storm. And you have to remember, these aren't just bullet points on a slide. These are real human pressures that directly impact the choices a student makes. And understanding that, having a bit of empathy, is really the first step to tackling this whole academic integrity thing. Okay, so building on that, let's talk about how students are using AI. Because this is absolutely critical. Not all AI use is cheating. It's not black and white. It really exists on a spectrum. And that means our response has to be way more nuanced than just ban it all. This table breaks it down so well. Over on one end, you've got legitimate use, things like brainstorming ideas or checking your grammar. It's basically a study tool. On the far end, you have clear-cut abuse, total academic misconduct. But honestly, the most important column here is the one in the middle, the gray area. This is where most of our students live. They're outlining essays, trying to improve a draft, and they are genuinely confused about what's okay and what's not. That's where we need to step in with clear guidance. So how do we give them that guidance? Well, this is where the game changes. We stop just reacting to AI use and start proactively managing it. This is all about building a framework for your course that's super clear, totally fair, and completely transparent. Here are 3 really powerful practical steps you can take. First, create a simple table that breaks down every single assessment and spells out exactly what level of AI is okay for each one. This is also the perfect time to revisit your learning objectives. Are your assessments and your AI policy actually helping students learn what you want them to learn? That's called constructive alignment. And remember, different contexts require different rules. What works for one course might not work for another. Second, you have to communicate this policy over and over and over again. Put it everywhere. And third, and this is so important, explain the why. Students are so much more likely to follow the rules when they actually understand the reason behind them. Now, when it's time for students to tell you how they used AI, let's be real. A simple little yes/no checkbox just isn't going to cut it anymore. We need to go a little deeper than that if we want real transparency. Something like this is way more effective. This is a detailed declaration form. It actually asks students to name the tools they used, explain what they used them for, and even show their work by providing prompts. See, this isn't about gotcha. It's about teaching accountability and making transparency just part of the process. And of course, if you're going to have clear rules, you have to be just as clear about what happens when those rules are broken. Any fuzziness here, and the whole system starts to fall apart. The keyword here is proportionality. A tiered system like this makes perfect sense. The goal should be educational first, punitive second. A minor slip up, like using AI for editing when you said not to, okay, that's a warning and a chance to resubmit. But a serious violation, like turning in a paper that's 100% AI, well, that escalates to a formal hearing. It's fair, it's transparent, and it's easy to defend. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, AI detection tools. Look, they can be part of your process, but please hear me on this. They are not a silver bullet. They are a tool, a starting point. They're never the final verdict. And we have to begin with this huge flashing warning sign. These tools are not perfect. They are known to have false positives, meaning they can flag perfectly human writing as being AI generated. If you rely only on that score, you're heading for disaster and probably some really unfair accusations. So, what's the right way to use them? Well, here's the best practice. Let the report be a trigger for you to take a closer look, but never ever treat it as definitive proof. Read the work yourself. Do you see weird shifts in tone or style? Then, and this is the most important part, have a supportive, non accusatory chat with the student. Just ask them about their process. And finally, document everything, every single step. So let's bring this all home. When you put all these pieces together, it points to a pretty fundamental shift in our thinking, away from being a detective and back to our real job as educators. And that's really the question we all need to ask ourselves, right? What is our actual goal? Is it just to catch students? Or is it to guide their learning and protect academic standards in a way that's fair and supportive? I mean, this quote from the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning just says it all, doesn't it? Our focus should be on supporting learning and providing clear guidance. That's a much better use of our energy than playing a cat and mouse game that, frankly, we're never going to win. Because at the end of the day, this is the balance we're all trying to strike. We absolutely have to uphold our academic standards, but we can do that while still building trust and having respectful, supportive relationships with our students. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. With these strategies in hand, how are you going to make that shift? How will you go from being an AI detective to becoming an AI guide? Because the goal isn't to fight the future, it's to teach our students how to navigate it with integrity.